Okay, so that song was a little like it
was, like, it was doom and gloom.
It was a little. Welcome everyone. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't
listen to the whole thing.
Listen to the song that we picked, but it was a little bit doom and gloom. Wow. But hey, puts us in the mood. Because it is serious. Serious subject today. Welcome everyone, and thank you guys for joining us on this special roundtable event with the experts in the cat world. Dr. Katie. I almost said Dr. Julie. Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor, Pam Rousseau with Perfectly Holistic, and Julie Ann Thorne from Naturally Cats are here today to give us all the education that we can consume as cat parents when it comes to disease and prevention. And yes, that means the V word. Yes, that means vaccine your kitties and we're trying not to use the word so we don't get banned or blocked, but this is very important information for all of us. We need to know, especially us new cat parents or new kitten parents, how can we do better by our kitties when it comes to disease and prevention.
Yeah, and let's kick this off with Dr. Katie Woodley, because I think disease prevention is so important for our cats, and I think there's probably people that will be joining us that have really gone through some heartbreaking experiences with new litters and stuff like that, communities. So Dr. Woodley, let's start by talking about why disease prevention is so important, and talk us through how we can best navigate that as cat parents.
Yeah, the V, whatever we're going to call it, the V.
The jab.
The jabs. Yes, the jabs are, here's the thing, okay? This is a topic that we have to approach, or that you're going to have to approach with your veterinarian at some point in your cat's life. And this is where we have to look at how do these work, and also why are your veterinarian recommending them? And it comes down to preventing infectious diseases. And some of these diseases can actually kill cats. And so with these vaccines, they've been around for a while, which is good in terms of making sure that the jab is as safe as possible. And there are studies that show that it can actually help prevent a lot of these diseases. So there is a lot of research behind these. Now, on the flip side, this is where they're used inappropriately a lot of times. They're used too frequently, and that's why we see vaccinosis, we see side effects, why there's a lot of fear around it. And so once again, just like anything that we talk about, and if you've come back time and time again, you hear us talk about this, where it's important to use any of the modalities we talk about appropriately, and that helps increase the safety efficacy. So with these vaccines, where I recommend pet parents go is the WSAVA vaccine guidelines. This is what your veterinarian should be following. So WSAVA stands for the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, WSAVA. And these are the guidelines that should be updated routinely. The one that I found was back in 2016, but they actually updated in 2020 with the American Association Feline Practitioners. And those guidelines are actually introducing titers and things that we're going to be talking about. So what I'll do is I'll share the link for some of these resources, so that way you can download these and you can read through them and you can take them to your veterinarian. Because in these guidelines, it actually talks about how, even though some of these vaccine manufacturers have it listed as a 1-year duration or license, so you have to annually vaccinate your cat. I said the word. The problem is that your veterinarian, based on the WSAVA guidelines, can actually go outside of those what the vaccine manufacturer is stating, and they can do it every 3 years. They just have to have your consent. And so many people don't know that information. And so even though the jabs are appropriate for preventing a lot of these diseases, and yes, I do agree that most kitty cats should have some of these jabs, that they're getting it too frequently. They're getting them all together. That is the problem. Or we're giving it to cats that are sick, or they have an immune health issue. And that's a lot of the time why we're seeing issues afterwards, or health issues. And that's what creates the fear. So that was kind of like a very broad general overview. But I think going back to those guidelines and what your veterinarian should be practicing is key. And this is something you can print out and take to your vet clinic and have them and say, I want you to follow these these jab requirements to keep my cat as safe as possible. And it empowers you to be able to say, like, I'm not just pulling this off the internet somewhere. These are actual guidelines for veterinarians.
Yeah,
I think it's really.
No, go ahead.
I think it's really important as well that we make sure, like you said, Katie, we share those links, because having the conversations can be difficult, because I know myself from my personal experience, and I'm sure that you ladies have had it, if not many of you that are watching us. You go to speak to your vet and they look at you with this massively puzzled face, and sometimes it's like you're questioning their education, you're questioning their science, you're questioning their practice, and that's not the case. So there is a part here where, as you've said, Katie, going with the information and saying, this is why I'm asking you questions, this is why I'm asking for a potentially different approach to your normal, this is why I'd like you to talk this through with you, can we consider this together, this is my for and against, because I think one thing that we forget is that when it comes to veterinary practitioners, it's about mutual respect. We are the cat's guardian. We are the cat's mum, the cat's dad. We are their guardian, and we speak for them. So yes, we take advice and input from our vets, but it is about having a mutual respect in terms of the relationship. So if you want to look into what you're doing with your cat in terms of jabs, it is important to make sure that you've got a vet that you can work with and who is open to having those conversations with you. Because I think, we can be brave, we can stand up, we can ask for help, we can ask for them to think outside the box or to do something that's different to their norm. We have the right to say that, to do that for our cats.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. We have to be we are their best advocate, right? Yeah. And thank you, Pam, for the term jab, because as I was saying the V word, I thought, oh wow, what
are we saying?
Could be vagina. Who knows?
I don't even know.
But you guys are totally right. I know that one of the biggest questions is when it comes to different vets, they have different ideas of what those core jabs are. Like what should our kittens be getting, or our cats if we're rescuing them off the street? What should they be getting? What is too much? When should they be getting them?
Yeah, can you guys all maybe speak to best practices that you've learned along the way? And Dr. B, we'll start with you too. I mean, I think that's those combo shots are something that a lot of people are becoming aware of now at the age at which they vaccinate.
Yeah. I know it's going to be hard. If this stays up, it'll be a miracle. So
we're talking about cats, Facebook. We're talking about cats. But maybe just basically walk through some of the jabs that are important for our kitties and what you see as best practices, looking at those guidelines provided, ages, different conditions, that sort of thing, to just give people a little bit of a basic roadmap.
Yeah. So what you're going to hear from your veterinarian is you're going to have two distinctions between like core jabs and non-core jabs. And this is where, even in these guidelines, it states that every cat is an individual. Is there feedback somewhere?
No,
that's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm trying to share this.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure it wasn't my side. So,
a second.
Okay. So going back to we have core and non-core jabs. Now, each cat is an individual. So this will vary for every cat. So just because there are all these jabs doesn't mean your cat should get all the jabs. And when we talk about core jabs, this is where these are going to be ones that cats all over are going to be exposed to these types of infectious diseases. So this is going to be your feline calicivirus, your feline panleukopenia. So that's like your feline parvovirus. That's going to include your feline herpes virus 1. And that's where we tend to see those grouped together into one vaccination. So your FVRCP is what it's technically called, and you'll see it on the vaccine label. Those are core vaccines because every cat can come in contact with it. So on the other side, your non-core vaccines are going to be things like Bordetella, which your cat does not need. Your feline leukemia jab. I use the word again. It's your feline leukemia jab. And this is going to be more so for your outdoor kitties or your cats that go to boarding facilities, or this is, and one of the things that changed with the guidelines recently in that 2020 update is that they state that this is actually a core jab for cats under 1 year. I don't agree with that personally, because if your cat's not being exposed to it, number one, you've tested your cat prior to bringing them into a home and you've isolated them from the other cats and they come back negative. Why, if they're going to be an indoor only cat, they're not going to go to a boarding facility, you do not need to give that injection.
Right.
Now, our recent rescue, we did not give that injection. I isolated him and tested him. So I personally followed this myself. Our other 2 rescue cats, they got everything because that's just what happens for your rescue animals. So that's something to be aware of. Like there's certain situations where we can't always control everything. But your other one that's a non-core vaccine is your FIP vaccine. That is not recommended and comes with a lot of adverse side effects. And I left out a big one, your rabies jab. So your rabies jab is a core jab. So that's something where legally too, this is for endemic areas. So there's countries like I used to work and live in New Zealand. There is no rabies there. So I didn't even have to worry about that. Hawaii is rabies free. So those jabs are not given in those countries or those states, and they're not legally required. So if you're in an area like that, and for some reason your veterinarian is like giving it, you need to ask those questions and make sure, like, why are they doing that? But that's one of the big ones. Now, here's the other thing is that there are different types of jabs. So they come, this is where a lot of people don't realize the types of, God, I just want to say the V thing, but so it could be inactivated, it can be attenuated live, or it can be a recombinant jab. And they're going to do different things and instill immunity and protection at different time frames. And also too, this is where your inactivated jab, so that typically is your rabies, because you don't want your cat to get rabies from the jab, right? So the inactivated form is safest for your cat. However, the way that it stimulates the immune system in your cat is through, this is where they have to put things into it to stimulate the immune system. And this is the things that cause the adverse side effects. Mm-hmm. So especially for your rabies jab, you want to make sure your veterinarian is using a 3-year licensed jab, if that makes sense. Most cats are getting a 1 year. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing, we're looking at the cat as an individual. We need to be asking, what is the risk of them coming into contact with this infectious disease? Yeah. What is their lifestyle factors? Are they indoor, outdoor? What are the, like, is it a multi-cat household? Are they going to be boarded? Things like that. And then also, what is their health and immune status? If your cat has had a jab reaction in the past, they should not be getting jabs in the future. The risk increases significantly of them having an anaphylactic reaction again or passing away from getting that jab. That's really, really important. And it's commonly missed. And it's stated in the actual label for these jabs that a veterinarian should not be giving those jabs if the cat is not technically healthy, right? Very important. So looking at all of those, that was a lot of information dumped. So I'll stop.
Well, I think it's very important that we always weigh the risk. I mean, it's the same for medicine too, right? You weigh the risk of the disease versus the risk of the jab, right? Like which one is going to be, if my cat's not going to be exposed to feline leukemia, for instance, then I've heard of so many people have come to us and said, my cat was diagnosed with feline leukemia, so the vet gave the vaccine. I've heard, we just participated in FELV Day and Feline Leukemia Day last weekend, and brought up the subject of, like, if your cat has feline leukemia, which everyone does in that group, then we do not need to vaccinate again. And for anything.
Yeah.
And with those went through the steps and the reasons why.
So Really quick though on that, because when people download this document, the WSAVA guidelines actually state if your cat is immunosuppressed, it's more reason to give the jabs. So that's where, if your veterinarian is following that, and I don't know why it's in, it makes zero, they're going off the principle of they're more likely to get sick, right? But this is where most veterinarians are not trained in holistic medicine or to view the body as a whole and look at all these tools we have that can improve their immune system and prevent disease in the first place and keep them healthy. So this is where I always say, I got eaten alive for this quote. It was a while ago, that a jab, so replace that with the word, does not induce optimal health. And so many people think that giving a jab is going to create optimal health. We're using it to prevent disease. And hopefully it's been studied and researched to show that it can prevent these infectious diseases, which a lot of these have a lot of great studies. But once again, in these guidelines, you'll see that the duration of immunity, what that means is your cat is forming antibodies that will protect them against the disease in the future if they came into like contact with it. That duration of immunity is usually lifelong. It is written in those guidelines. And so even like you'll see that the licenses on these jabs depends on the company and whether or not they applied to have that duration of immunity tests, like to showcase that, yes, these pets were re-exposed to that virus and they didn't get sick. That's what they do. Is they do these like challenge tests to make sure that the jab is doing what it's supposed to. They don't do that because why? Costs money. And so, of course, we want you to buy the jab every single year. So that makes the money. Money is what drives these problems, right? You just have to follow the money. It's not always about what's best. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But by knowing and following a lot of these guidelines and doing the research and empowering yourself so that you can have a open conversation with your veterinarian, not only one, do you start changing things so that we're not re-jabbing them every year. We're going to at least every 3. Hopefully we're going to lifetime or doing titer testing, which we'll talk about. But that's really important to, I sidetracked a little bit just because when people read this, they're going to see like, oh, vets are recommending immune suppressed cats they need to have the jabs, which is creating all the issues that we see every day with our patients, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And which brings up Pam. I know you have you are constantly, including us, seeing in our cats, you've seen so many vaccine reactions or vaccinosis with your clients. What are some of those? What are some of the things that you see in your practice when it comes to the side effects?
There's a lot of side effects, and something that I learned from Dr. Will Falconer, who is a homeopathic veterinarian now for probably 40 years. He's a wealth of information, but he's the one that I learned a lot of this from. And basically, the typical signs of a reaction don't have to be immediate. They can be up to 30 days. They can be months. They can be years later that this can show up. And so that's why a lot of times the vets are not willing to admit that, oh, this could be a vaccine issue, if it's 30 days, 60 days later and their cat starts itching like crazy and pulling their fur out and, having skin lesions and all this other stuff. But some of the common reactions that you can see right away or within a very short period of time can be pain at the injection site, fever, lethargy, lameness, vomiting, diarrhea, anaphylactic reaction, hives, swelling, tumor formation, shock, and even death. And that's a very serious list. The clients that I tend that come across my path, they've already typically been vaccinated maybe months, maybe years ago, but they have chronic immune system issues. Their cytokine storms resonate in their body. Their body is on this hyper, I want to call it a hamster wheel, running very, very fast with no break. You know, their immune system is on hyperdrive, and the cytokine storm is just basically a bunch of inflammatory messengers running around the body saying, there's a fire, there's a fire, there's a fire, and there's no fire truck coming. You know, there's no off switch. And so that's, if you let it go too long, you can have organ damage, you can have skin issues, you can have it can lead into so many other chronic illnesses that are immune related. It's really, really sad. I mean, I had a cat years ago who developed a big tumor on his leg, and it was from the feline leukemia vaccine. That, you know, this is before I learned better. And I took him to the vet. I'm like, what is this? What's going on with my cat? And the vet even said to me, oh, it's probably from this vaccine. You know, we don't even need to give those to cats if they're indoors. Well, no one ever told me that.
Right.
And how many vaccines did he get? Because I was that dutiful mom that went every year when I got the card in the mail that said it's time to come in, because I didn't know any better. And I felt terrible. It's like, you mean you've been given, it wasn't this vet that I had gone to, but it was one of those, you know, they call them, you know, the combo wombo. Yeah.
The cocktail.
You know, that you go to at like a PetSmart. We're having, you know, a special day where come get your cat's jabs all updated. And it's like, boom, 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 all in one. Well, I didn't know that was not what you needed to do. And no one in that setting, no vet or vet tech in that setting ever said, oh, does your cat stay indoors? You probably don't need this one. They didn't ask the questions, and I didn't know to ask the questions.
Right.
So I'm really, really glad we're having this. And my cat Snow Bear is the one who died within 7 days from getting an updated set of jabs, because he was going to be boarded in a boarding facility, and they were not going to let me board him without having proof of updated jabs. And I was hell bent against it, but I had my hands tied.
Right. Well, and I want to speak a little bit. I know there's so many beautiful rescuers here in this community. So I want to talk about, like Dr. Katie said, it's just what happens with shelter or rescue cats, that they are given the combo wombo, and then we're left to kind of navigate these side effects. But my God, Julianne Thorne, your face, you are chomping at the bit.
This topic it breaks my heart, you know, because there is such in a way, a wealth of information, and yet people can be so overwhelmed. You know, I've had conversations with my vet about, we call it titer testing, but what did you call it, Katie?
Oh, titer
testing, and
titer. Herbs.
And she said, she just looked at me like really blankly. She's like, we don't do that for cats, we only do that for dogs. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, we don't do that for cats, we only do it for dogs. And I said, well, can we start? Can you do it? She's like, well, I don't know. I have to ask whoever they send the results off to. I'm like, okay. So we did it. And then what came back was inconclusive. So, you know, I was stuck. Like, you know, we've had situations where, like you've also, we consider the needs of the cat. You know, Pickle, she didn't go out. She didn't get vaccinations after the first or second year we had her. You know, she was 4 or 5 years old. And actually, I'm choked because I've just experienced last year what Katie said, which is, you know, my vet said to me that Leo is immune compromised, so we jabbed him. You know, and it breaks my heart now to think about the advice that I went on, the research that I did, and actually the kind of conflict that we've dealt with. You know, but what we can do, like Pam said, when there are adverse reactions, is look at how you can support your cat. Now, you know, I'm sure that there are the other ladies have got some other suggestions, but for me, like, you know, mine are remedies. You know, I don't actually go to herbs, because then for me they're so delicate, they're so sensitive. You know, they're so light in terms of energy support. So I would use essential oils. You know, and actually I would bring in some powders as well. So like rosehip powder. It's a huge boost to the immune system, you know, and it helps to detox the liver. So, you know, when you've got these chemicals going into the cat's body, like you suck it out, so what can you do? You can support the cat with trying to process it, like you do with the thingy bobbies on the neck. So we would offer don't laugh at my thingy bobbies. We would laugh at the we would every time we would put down I have put down, sorry, rose hip powder. And of course, spirulina, I recommend that for everything, but it's great. But also there are a couple of essential oils, so seaweed and lime, which I know sounds a bit crazy, but both of those are brilliant liver support. So seaweed, it needs to be organic and the concentrate if you can get it. And lime, again, as high quality as possible. Now, you may think that cats have an aversion to citrus, and they do if they don't need the remedy. But lime has been shown to really support liver detox. And when I had a cat that had a general anesthetic, my tutor, like many years ago, the first thing she said to me was, as soon as they come around from the anesthetic, offer them lime, because it helps to support the liver. So for me, it would be, the bottle of essential oil with a lid on, offering it to the cat to see if they choose to inhale it, or one drop of the oil on a nice piece of fabric on the floor. Let the cat choose what they need to. So there is no question that obviously if your cat is suffering severe reactions, the first port of call is you go back to the vet. Obviously, that's not my suggestions aren't in replacement to those. But if your cat is home and you need extra support, or there's not much more you can do for them, then those are some of the things that I would recommend.
Would you suggest using these things regardless of if you see a reaction or not? For your cats, if they have received a jab?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. It doesn't have to be a kind of first aid reaction. You're absolutely right. You can use it, as we talked in the title, disease versus prevention. So, absolutely use it if you've given them that, to support them, to help boost their liver and their body to process what's come into it. Definitely.
Okay, and Pam, I know you helped us. Yeah, you walked us through. It was actually, just to give you guys a little bit of the backstory, when we met Pam in 2019 or 2018, it was our Pooh Bear that we reached out to her with, and turns out he had not been jabbed since he was with us, but he was jabbed twice. Oh no, he was jabbed with us. That's right. You give the story. I forgot.
Well, I was going to say he came to us as the classic kind of shelter rescue cat, all the wham bam, thank you combo, ma'am, all the everything, and neutered really young. When he came to us, he was basically an outdoor cat. He got a boo from another kitty. We bring him to the vet, and in order for them to treat him, they needed to give him a rabies jab. And it was just a snowball of horrible health issues from there.
But he was about 2 years old, or 2.5 years old at that time when that happened, maybe 3. But when we came to Pam, when we met Pam, he was 9 years old, and she found that he was still suffering from vaccinosis. So she helped us through some remedies for him. Can you give some insight more about those?
Yeah, there's one of the primary remedies for I use homeopathy most for specifically detoxing vaccines. And again, I learned a lot of this from Dr. Falconer. Thuja occidentalis 30C, if they've just been jabbed with the FVRCP jab, or if it shows up as vaccinosis from a long time ago, it tends to be a 200C potency that is necessary. And then if it's the rabies, again, if it's just happened, it's the 30C potency under Lyssin. Lyssin, Lyssin, is a typical rabies jab homeopathic, but it's not the only one, but it tends to be the primary one that most pets need. If it's been a chronic issue from this rabies jab, it tends to be a 200C potency that they need. So
and that's what Pooh Bear needed.
That's what he needed. Right.
But what's very interesting is that you told us at that time, because he was also he had the most behavioral issues, right? He had the most health issues, but he also had the most behavioral issues, and he was angry. He was, what we at that time, what we were describing as an angry cat, lashing out. And what you had explained to us is that he was experiencing any of the
rabies symptoms.
correct.
Yes, the actual characteristics of the disease can manifest it with vaccinosis situations. So, for example, in the rabies jab, some of the examples of vaccinosis might look like, a pet that's gone from very calm and docile to all of a sudden they are angry, they're lashing out, they're ripping things apart, they're eating things that are not food, they're just rah, 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 they're chewing things until they're just disintegrated. I had one client's dog. That was passive, calm dog, grabbed a kitten and shook it to death. I mean, out of nowhere. So, and she was mortified, because it's like, this dog has never behaved like that. I'm like, did you just get him a rabies thing? Yeah, just like we did like 30 days ago. I'm like, mm-hmm. I mean, it's just things like that. It's anger. It might be, gosh, there's so many different things. I'd have to go look at my list. But yes, anger and just cranky and grumpy, and that's not who they are. It's the characteristics of that virus that come through. And then for the FVRCP vaccine, it might be symptoms that look like herpes. It might be symptoms that resemble distemper. It might be symptoms that resemble calicivirus. It doesn't mean that they had those viruses, but they're starting to manifest some of those actual symptoms of those illnesses. So that's what I see a lot. That's what comes up whenever vaccinosis comes up. And then the other thing that always comes up is heavy metals. Heavy metals will resonate. So it's like mercury or aluminum will come up if they've had one of those jabs that have those ingredients in them, and they're used for adjuvants, right, Katie?
Yeah, they are used. The heavy metals is a big thing. We do heavy metal testing through hair mineral analysis.
Yeah.
Every single animal has aluminum and mercury in them.
Yeah.
Every single animal. I have not had one come back normal, and it depends on how many jabs they've had. And also, too, there's other elements in the environment where they're coming from. But that 100% right there this is why, regardless of whether or not you see a symptom afterwards, if you do have to use these, there's so many things like you just heard. I mean, there's so many others, too, that you can use to help support detoxification, support the body, support the immune system. There's studies on the human side that actually showcase, based on the microbiome health and certain strains of bacteria in the gut, will determine whether or not you're more likely to have a side effect. That's pretty powerful. We know 80% of the immune system's in the gut, so that makes sense. Yes. So that's where also, too, like we're talking about detox. So a lot of people, like those homeopathy remedies are really powerful and helpful, but don't forget about gut health. Don't forget about like supporting digestion. That is a big detox organ. And we see a lot of, GI upset. And because it's delayed, no one ever connects the two. And so this is so important that, vaccinosis is not a word that is defined medically. Like if you bring that up to your veterinarian, they will say like, that's not a real disease. And so that's another thing to be aware of. However, going back to the symptoms that you see, anaphylactic reaction is, not common. I've actually had a patient at the very start of my career. The cat started vomiting immediately after I gave a jab.
Wow.
If that person had left the vet clinic, that cat would have died. So we had to use IV steroids, put the cat on IV fluids to save its life. So this is one of the other things, going back a little bit, like if you do have to use these, make sure that you wait at least 20 minutes at the clinic from the time when it's given, so that you're there if your pet does have an anaphylactic reaction, because those are deadly. But there's, there's so much we can do to help them or reduce the risk, the need to give these, and assessing like your individual cat's risks in the first place is so important. My cat's here will never receive another jab ever again in their lives. Never again. And they've, I could titer them. They're not at a high risk. I don't even need to spend the money to titer them, to be honest.
Right, exactly. And those titers can be rather expensive these days because they're not super well known, even in the conventional in the veterinarian world.
It's titas.
The titas are for anybody that doesn't know, a titer test is a simple blood draw, and it is a testing against. It's an antibody test, which most of us now, because of the pandemic, most of us know what an antibody test is. But that's what a tita test is, or a titer test, where they can test and see if your cat is still if the jab that they got is still basically working, or if their immune systems are what's the word that I'm looking for? Immune.
If they responded, or like their immune system, they've created the antibodies.
If they have immunity.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so those titer and teeter. I know I'm like jumping at the bit. I'm sorry. Like,
I can't help it. Really said I love Julianne's facial expressions because I'm just like reacting to everyone.
It's intense, like conversation.
It is.
The big thing too to keep in mind, and most veterinarians do not understand how immune systems are.
No.
You have two different types of an immune system, and titer testing is only testing one aspect. It's not testing whether or not your cat or your dog has memory cells. So memory cells are the things that typically honestly, like, unless your cat is severely immunosuppressed and they have issues, which can happen. And if you want to know, ask your veterinarian to do an IgA test. And there are companies out there now, Innovative Pet Labs. They have a stool test that you as a pet parent can order and send in and see, is your cat lacking IgA? Is your dog lacking IgA? Those tend to be the immunosuppressed ones, and it can be a genetic thing. But most of the time, your cats are going to have memory cells. You're just not able to test them on that titer or teeter test.
What is an IgA test?
So IgA is a type of immunoglobulin that essentially lives. The majority of it is found in the mucus lining of the gut, and this is where the immune system is housed. And so your IgA is really important for finding the things that shouldn't be crossing over into the bloodstream and over activating the immune system. So a lot of these pets that we see chronic health issues, immune suppression, autoimmune disease, cancer, allergies, they have IgA deficiency. And most veterinarians don't even know what IgA or the mucus lining. And so they don't even know what to test for and to identify. And you can use immunoglobulins, you can use colostrum. There are so many ways that we can support optimal gut health to help replenish the immune system so that your pet, if you have to give one of these jabs, responds appropriately. And then we also detox them. So those are some important things to think about that play a part, even though they don't seem related to the topic of jabs.
Can I add another thing here in terms of the whole post-jab detox process? It's really, really important to make sure that the liver is supported and the lymphatic system is functioning optimally, and that your drainage pathways in the body are open and flowing. Because if they are not, if the liver is not functioning optimally to be able to filter that blood and pull out those toxins and waste, they will keep recirculating in the body, and you will have a very miserable pet. Miserable. And you could have diarrhea, you could have total, horrible skin outbreaks, itching, there's just so many symptoms that are related to that. So that's one of the key things that I always do is when I'm working with a cat or a dog that has some kind of vaccinosis issue going on, is I always test to see if there's stagnation in the body through the lymphatics, and make sure that liver needs supported at the same time. Because when those pathways are open and working, it makes the detox process so much better. And then you also always have to remember to go back and detox those heavy metals out, because they will stay in your body. The homeopathics do not remove the heavy metals. We got to go back and take care of those.
What's your go-to for that?
Right now, I'm using the Heavy Metal and Chemical Cleanse by Global Healing, because it's literally a drop, and it's kind of a sweet liquid. So it's not horribly difficult to give. You know, you can mix it in food. Some cats don't do as well with chlorella because it makes them constipated. So just a tiny little drop of this, like once a day for 6 weeks, is usually takes care of that. And then I also address the leaky gut issue, or make sure that we seal that gut lining with the ion gut support for pets, because that is such a crucial part. Like Dr. Katie was saying, we've got to address the gut, because those dangerous chemicals and toxins will strip that one layer of cell membrane in there. And so then you have all these microbes and proteins and things that would not normally cross that blood barrier getting into the bloodstream, and then you have autoimmune issues. So we've got to heal the gut. We've got to make sure that those intestinal linings are sealed, so that when we replenish with the colostrum, with the probiotics, and we got to build that foundation for that healthy home for the probiotics to live in.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things too, where I feel like people that decide, okay, I'm going to go the natural route and I really want to try to detoxify things or do whatever. I forget who was saying this. May have been Dr. Katie, who happens to be here today, so let me know, or Dr. Judy, who
Is not here.
It's not me.
And Dr. Suter, I think this is something that's just the importance of preparing that gut to really be able to handle. So if you're dealing with leaky gut already, or if we're dealing with something where we're seeing the symptoms of it, then it's so important to prepare that environment in a way where it can better respond to the things that are going to help.
Which brings up my next question about age. When should we? And I'm asking you guys for your personal opinions, right? Versus like what the requirements are or say. But for us, with our last 2 litters of kittens or siblings, we waited a long time. We wanted to just keep waiting and keep waiting and keep waiting. We thought we want their immune system to be able to develop as much as possible. We want to give them as much support as possible, get that gut as strong as possible before we give them their jabs. But I don't know what the requirement or what they say. And I know, rescue cats are out of the question because they're jabbed immediately, but as kittens, but for if you're taking in a cat off the street and you have the opportunity to pick when they should be jabbed, when would you say?
Your vet, I'll kick that one off. Your vet, well, the requirements, you can cause a lot of harm if you give some of these jabs prior to 6 weeks of age. So that's very, very, very important. So if you're able to control, I don't recommend that age. Most veterinarians are going to start the puppies and kittens at 8 weeks. And then every 3 to 4 weeks, they're getting a booster jab until they're 16 weeks. And in the new guidelines, you'll see that they're actually recommending a booster at 6 months. And the reason why is that we have these things called maternally derived antibodies. And those are from the mother's colostrum. And so within 24 hours, once they're born, after 24 hours, the gut seals. But prior to that, hopefully the mom has some colostrum where all these good immunoglobulins and lactoferrin, things that are going to help the immune system and develop the immune system and the gut health, are getting into the kitten. And the problem is, though, and this is why your veterinarian recommends boosters so frequently, because that's a common question. Like, why is it so often? Like, why do I have to go in so frequently and get so many for these young animals? And it's because those maternally derived antibodies actually block the jab from working. So it inactivates it. And so what they found is that we're seeing 16 weeks, even 20-week-old kittens in these studies that they did, which is why they updated the recommendations, that they still had maternally derived antibodies. So what I would do I didn't have a choice with Moki as a kitten because he came from a shelter. But if I were to get a new little baby kitten today that, I have a 6-week-old shows up on like fresh little kitten that hasn't been injected with anything, or seems pretty healthy, no signs of disease, what I would do is I would wait, because I'm in an enclosed home. The cat's not going outside. The other cats are healthy. There's no risk of infection. I would wait until at least 6 months, and then I'd potentially look at doing the first one injection. And then I would wait probably as long as I could to do a rabies legally, or potentially get away with it, you know, but a lot of people have to do it legally. And then I'd be doing all the things we just talked about prior to giving any of those, and then supporting them once again afterwards with a lot of, the homeopathy remedies. Also, I want to add to that, Adored Beast Rebalancer, great one that you can use. So if you can't find, for whatever, you can usually find a lot of those homeopathy remedies, but that's how I would look at it. But your vet's going to be recommending those boosters. So that's another thing to get prepared for, to have that conversation. And here's the thing, your FERCP is not required by law. So you can wait and you can decline it. And if you need to sign a waiver stating that you're aware of the risks. And then that way you're not, and never ever give multiple injections at the same time. Space them out by, I always say, at least a month, but space them out as long as you can get away with.
Yeah, I agree.
Julianne?
Yeah, echo everything Katie said. Unfortunately, when we've got ours, they're rescues. So, they've had them. Leo was 18 months old. Max, they wouldn't give him to us until they'd spayed him far too early, and another topic, and done the jabs. So, I would be, if I was to get another kitten now and I was able to get it, I don't want kittens to be leaving mums until they're 12 weeks because, it's heartbreaking because they're not fully formed. But like Katie said, if Leo, which is one of my dreams, Leo turns up in the garden and he's got a kitten in his mouth, he's like, Mum, I'm home with the baby, I'm like, heaven. I would be, my first port of call would be, Katie, hello, what do I do? So I echo everything that Katie just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be a great dream.
One of the real quick. So Belladonna, their new study recommends no kitten boosters. So there is, depending on the type of jab that's used, there are studies that are showing that they are maintaining their antibodies. So that's something, and this is why also too, we're over jabbing pets, and this is why, knowing this information, you shouldn't feel guilty for saying no, I prefer to wait. Or if you can, that's the thing. Now, if your cat's sick and you go in and they're requiring a jab, that's a different situation. That's where making sure you're really supporting the immune system and detox afterwards, because sometimes you just can't get away with not having to give something, unfortunately, with the way the world is.
Right.
And as Dee Dee says, our protocols are different here in the UK because they have a one jab, and then usually 4 weeks later they're given the second one, and then it's yearly. So ours are slightly
okay. For your kittens.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because what I was looking up this weekend were studies on cats versus dogs, like how many cats are vaxxed or jabbed versus dogs, right? And so I just did a general lookup, and I found this study, and I was reading through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is very interesting, because it was showing that cats received more jabs than dog. And then I saw that it was actually in Great Britain, and it was and I was like, really? That is interesting. I did not know that. And so then I went to another study where in the US, where it showed it was 1,670 clinics. They did a 4-year study from 2016 to 2020. And from those 1,670 clinics, they were able to check 5.5 million dogs and 1.9 million cats, which showed that those specific cats and dogs were kind of close as far as getting jabbed and how often and whatnot. But that's how many, knowing that in the US, 15% of cats are actually taken to the vet on a regular basis. Because it's always been one of my like theories in my head that maybe that's why cats tend to live longer than most dogs, is because they get less of these exposure to jabs. One of the reasons. Anyway, I thought it was really interesting that it's so different.
Well, and I wonder too. So this is where you have more probably indoor outdoor cats in the UK too. And that's,
I mean,
that's
like
another
you just
reason,
said,
right?
coyotes, I mean, my boys are in overnight because we've got badgers, foxes, deer, and that's my choice. But, my dad, he's got his out overnight and they just come and go, so I imagine that's probably a big factor in it, that we've got a lot more outdoor, we've got a lot, our wildlife's not as intense. Because like Laura Lee, I think said she's got something else. What was it? She said she's got coyotes. No, is that you? Did you say coyotes?
We do.
We have coyotes. That's why I won't let my cats out. The worry and stress is just not worth it to me. When we lived in New Zealand and we had nothing other than like birds, our cats were indoor outdoor. But also, too, I mean, it comes with risks. We were about to move and Stanley went missing and came home literally hours before we were to leave our house to cross the ferry. And it was after that, I was like, can't do this. The stress, like it was awful searching the fields for this cat for like 2 days. So everyone has I mean, we've talked about this before. Everyone has their own elements of like what you're able to handle. Me personally, after that, too stressful. So the worry, but it also plays a part. Once again, that indoor outdoor cat is very different from my indoor cats, and their risks are going to be very different. But also too, I mean, I believe there's actually some studies that show, and it makes sense, that your indoor outdoor animals, they're going to have more enrichment, right? That's going to help their stress levels. It's going to help with inflammation in general too. So there's pros and cons to each thing that and at the end of the day, the decision you make just has to be the right one for you and your fur family.
Yeah. Like Erin just said, catios.
Yeah,
brilliant. They're great.
That we can do to help give them safe spaces as well. And I know, Pam, we completely jumped over you when we were talking about the like what age, like you mentioned so many times, like with Snow Bear, not knowing any better or feeling what would your is that sweet lady Aylin with you today?
Yes, it is. She wanted in.
Yeah,
she is my experiment. She had one FERCP vaccine jab from her breeder at 12 weeks of age. I have not given her anything since. She's indoors, except for sitting on the back patio. And at our old house, it was completely indoors. And I got a waiver for the rabies jab because I threw a fit.
Like, sometimes you just gotta throw a fit.
I threw a fit and I cried. I said, and it was months after Snow Bear had died because of that. And I said, I'm not doing it. I've seen, I dug my heels in until she said, well, we have this waiver. I'm like, I'll sign.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, even our conventional veterinarian, one of our conventional veterinarians here, who is a feline only vet, she's like, if the cats are inside, I don't even recommend, giving them jabs at all. I don't recommend the rabies.
What's the point?
Yeah, and so there are some, and that's another like really important point as far as like finding the right vet that works for you and your kitty. And sometimes you have to go through several, like we did. Sometimes you have to interview some, and kind of figure out where their stance is so that you guys can have like a mutual relationship and understand those things. So if there were a time in which, our cats might, somebody might require some jab report or whatever, then we could possibly get a waiver from that veterinarian who says that, it's not necessary if your cat's inside.
Right. So and I think that's where you just have to have that education, and like we talked about earlier, weigh the risk versus the benefits. Yes. And what is the risk of her catching those diseases that they are jabbed for. Another thing that Dr. Falconer said that I think is super important to remember is that older pets do not die from diseases that they are jabbed for. They die from other issues. So it's not even necessary to keep rejabbing older cats, senior cats.
Well, and Ron Schultz, was it Ron Schultz? Is that his name?
Yes,
Yes.
the veterinary immunologist. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I've read so much about the beginning of I think it was in the 70s or 80s where it really became a big thing, and how I think it was like the American Animal Association or American Veterinarian, whatever hospital, they did some research and found out that all of these last at least 7 years. And Katie's right that what happened was they all got together and they're like, okay, well, it lost 7 years, but does that mean that we shouldn't still do it? Like, we're going to lose our clients if this happens. So we should still have them come back every year, right? And then
follow the money.
Follow the money.
They were like, no, let's at least do it every 3 years. So then that's when it became like some kind of law in many places where even though it's the last 7, we're going to do it every 3 at least.
Yeah. I mean, here's the reality. I mean, how at risk are your indoor cats of getting
Any
rabies?
disease.
Well, and any disease too.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Most cats are born with herpes virus. So how strong their immune system is going to dictate whether or not they show symptoms, and it recurs. Just like, how many people here have had a cold sore sometime in their life? Yeah, probably most people. Guess what? We have herpes virus in us. But if your immune system's strong, you're managing your stress, you're not going to have recurrence of those cold sores. And so it's so important for the people that are like, because there comes a time, and this is the stressful part, where they don't accept a titer, they don't accept a waiver, you have to board your cat. I recommend, this is who we use, trustedhousesitters.com is amazing. And anywhere in the world, you can list your house and people come and stay for free. You can pay them if you want, but they stay for free and take care of your cats. We had to go away for a wedding, and and we had a vet tech and her husband who worked from home. And honestly, like, I just haven't had time to go and do it for other like pet parents, but I can choose to go to Italy. I can go to the UK and watch cats, and I have a place to stay for free, and they don't have to pay me anything. And it's a win-win for everyone. So 100% trustedhousesitters.com. It's amazing. We've used them for years and years. And you get applications. We screen the people that were going to come and live in our house to make sure they were a good fit for what we were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's such valuable
job then.
I know. We're all like travel the world. I mean, it's so neat. Just like, honestly, like, whether or not you need a pet sitter or you want to like travel and you get to take care of like cats or other people. Like, there's people that are asking for you to watch goldfish. Like, I'm like, how easy is that?
I love it. I love it.
Trustedhousesitters.com.
Yes.
Okay, I know this happens every time, but we are literally seconds away from being out of time. But this is a big question. We're talking all about disease prevention, when, what, where, what's needed, all of that. We've covered a lot today, and Erin just posted this. I want to do on the spot question. We have and Erin's a beautiful rescuer. They've got their foster kittens scheduled for their second FVRCP tomorrow. Now I'm debating what to do.
Erin, reschedule it, and we'll talk about it in the Q&A tomorrow in my community. But what I would do is, and I can't remember exactly how old these kittens are, but if these were my kittens, I would defer it, especially, I don't think they're 16 weeks old yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would defer it past when we know maternally derived antibodies are going to affect that vaccine that jab from working as well as you want it to, which is why you're giving it. And so I would defer it, and we can talk more tomorrow.
3 months old.
Yeah, 3 months.
12 weeks.
12. I would defer it.
3 months.
There you go.
Okay.
If it were
you guys, this is just, I know we're always over time, but for everyone that's joined us, where can everyone find you, find out what's going on? anything that you got upcoming. Let them know what's up. Dr. Katie, let's start with you.
So I'm Dr. Katie Woodley. If you didn't know that, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You can find me. I'm the owner, founder of The Natural Pet Doctor. So I'm a holistic veterinarian that also has the conventional side and background too. So I use herbs, Chinese herbal medicine, acupuncture, essential oils, and also food therapy to help your cats and your dogs thrive. So you can find more at thenaturalpetdoctor.com, and then also social media, Facebook, Instagram, The Natural Pet Doctor, and our YouTube channel, Dr. Katie Woodley, The Natural Pet Doctor.
Wonderful. Julianne Thorne.
So my name is Julianne and I am from Naturally Cats. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I offer cat chakra cleanses and I'm an animal communicator. I've got a workshop next week all about herbs. So how to use them, which ones to do, which ones to have in your cupboard, in your apothecary, which ones can help your cat for different reasons, how to use them, what to look for. That is next week at Wednesday, 7 till 9 p.m. UK time. So the link's in my bio on my Instagram and I'll pop it on Facebook. And I've got Dr. Katie Woodley coming to do a live with me on the 15th of August, talking all about cats and gut health. So if you want to learn a little bit more, then be sure to join us on the Naturally Cats Facebook page or Instagram. I'm not sure if we can do both. We'll try it. And we'll be talking all about that. So yeah, if you've got any questions about your cat, then feel free to get in touch.
Wonderful. Pam.
Okay, I'm Pam with Perfectly Holistic, and my website is perfectlyholistic.com. Make sure you use 3 R's. And this is the boutique for cats is shop.perfectlyholistic.com. I am the owner and founder of Perfectly Holistic, and I do alternative healing analysis. I do cat health analysis using muscle testing. And I also do mind, body, spirit release for people and for pets, which is a holistic approach for clearing emotional blocks and forms of interference in the body. So it's really, really cool. So anyway, I love what I'm doing, and you can find me on my websites and reach out if I can help.
You guys are all so fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us again this month for this roundtable. Very important discussion. And thank you guys all, everyone that joined us. I saw that we had quite a few people join us today. So we're
even on a Monday. What about that,
on a
ladies?
Monday. That's awesome.
Wow.
That you guys came to join us today for this very important discussion. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to any of us. And we will brainstorm together for answers. But until next time, we will see you guys very soon.
Go give your babies boots.
Love you
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.